Today's lesson is called Being Smart with Smartphone Use. Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff.
My name is Roger, and today we're going to continue talking about the pros and cons of smartphones, the advantages and disadvantages of smartphone use. And most of you out there probably think that there's nothing wrong with smartphones. They are only good for us. We can't imagine life without them. The world would totally fall apart. We would be destroyed. We'd starve to death if we didn't have our smartphones. But there are some arguments that suggest that too much of a good thing could be bad. Smartphones may have their dark side.
Yep. Last time we talked about the pros of smartphones. And yes, there are some compelling arguments for smartphones. If you do have a connection to the internet, the world is at your fingertips, so to speak. A universe of information is at your fingertips. With a click of a button or a tap of a finger, you have entire encyclopedias at your disposal. You can Google anything, get on Wikipedia, you can buy things on Amazon. The list goes on and on. But here's the thing. For me, after a while, I don't want to be on the internet anymore. Once I've looked up what I want to look up, I put my phone away. If I play a game, I play a game for a while, and then I stop playing it. The same thing as a kid. I used to play Nintendo for a while, and then I'd stop. Okay, it's the same deal. So I can see the pros, but at a certain point, yes, like Roger said, you can have too much of a good thing. So let's now talk about the cons of smartphone usage. Yes, let's go ahead and get started. Let's take a short break. Then we'll come back and we'll start to discuss it.
Teachers have many worries about smartphone use, including distractions, cyberbullying, and cheating. There's also the digital divide. Not everyone has access to the best smartphones and apps, the lack of which might put these people at a disadvantage. This problem has recently become more evident because of the coronavirus pandemic, which has caused many schools to move their classes online.
各位好，第一部分我们看到单字 distraction 这个字是名词，指分心、分散注意力的事物、娱乐、消遣。例如It's a good idea to eliminate distractions while you're studying. 读书期间，移除会分散注意力的事物是一个好主意。另外，这个字去掉字尾 ion 就成了动词 distract， 指转移，使分心。像是 My dog wouldn't come when I called it because it was distracted by a squirrel up in a tree. 我的狗在我叫它时没有理我，因为在树上的松鼠让它分心了。再补充一个相关片语 drive somebody to distraction。表示使某人分心，使困惑。我们可以说 The beeping of the car alarm drove Jill to distraction. 汽车警报器的哔哔声让 Jill 分心了。再来，我们看到片语 put or place somebody or something at a disadvantage， 表示使处于劣势、不利的地位。举例来说 The player's sore elbow put him at a disadvantage in the final match. 那名选手因手肘疼痛而在决赛中处于劣势。另外，这个片语仅用 at a disadvantage 就可以表示处于劣势，像是 Mona was at a disadvantage in the running race because her foot was still sore. Mona 因脚仍酸痛而在这场跑步比赛中处于劣势。再来，我们看到形容词 evident 指显而易见的、明白的。例如 It's evident from this letter that Jackie is a good writer. 从这封信可以明显看出 Jackie 的文笔很好。或是 Tina's dissatisfaction with the situation is evident in her tone. Tina 的语调明显表达出对情况的不满。另外，这个字加上字尾 ly 就成了副词 evidently， 指显然的、明显的。举例来说 This question was already answered, but evidently you weren't listening. 这个问题已经回答过了，显然你没有在听。
Okay, remember last time we spent some time talking about the advantages to smartphone use. Today, as promised, we're going to talk about some of the cons or some of the disadvantages to smartphone use. And let's talk about how they're used in education. Now, teachers have many worries about smartphone use, including distractions, cyberbullying, and cheating. So, yes, we did talk about the fact that smartphones can be useful in an educational setting. However, teachers do have some concerns about students using smartphones. They're concerned about distractions. A distraction is something that distracts you, that makes you think about something other than what you're supposed to be thinking about. And teachers want their students to be focusing on the information in class. They cannot have distractions. In the old days, of course, some distractions were students passing notes to each other or trying to chat when the teacher's back was turned. Those were some distractions. But now, of course, we're going to have distractions from smartphones. So the teacher may be writing something on the board, and the students are playing a game with their smartphone.
Smartphones, they distract you. They allow for cyberbullying. That's a big thing these days. And then also cheating. I actually teach some math on the side here in Taiwan. I am amazed. There are some apps like Photo Math. You can have your phone do math problems for you. I am not kidding. You take a picture of the math problem, and somehow the app can take that picture, convert it into digital stuff, figure out the math, and give you the answer. It makes cheating so easy. And I'm not talking about simple math. Some of these apps can do very, very complicated math for you. So it makes cheating very, very easy. Even on the SAT there, where they allow you to use really advanced calculators on that test, they still disallow smartphones because it's far too easy to cheat. So there's those things to take into account. Then there's also the digital divide.
Right. Sometimes we talk about the divide between the rich and the poor. The divide is like the difference between them. And the digital divide here just refers to those who have good devices and those who do not. And as it goes on to say here, not everyone has access to the best smartphones and apps, the lack of which might put these people at a disadvantage. Now, most smartphones are pretty functional. They can do all sorts of things. But, of course, there are some high-end models that cost a pretty penny. They cost an arm and a leg. And I'm guessing that those phones can do things that cheaper phones cannot.
Yeah, there you go. So not everyone has access to the best. Okay, maybe you don't come from a super rich family and your phone is a hand-me-down. Maybe it's your mom's old phone or your dad's old phone. And even if that phone is 3, 4, 5 years old, it might not have the capacity to run the newest apps, the best apps and stuff like that. So that's going to put you behind. That's going to put you on the wrong end of the digital divide. You are going to be put at a disadvantage. By the way, if you have an advantage, that means you have something that helps you get an edge that someone else doesn't have, okay? If you're that person who doesn't have the advantage and you're one step behind, so to speak, that means you are at a disadvantage or you have been put at a disadvantage.
Yeah, in the past, I thought about getting a job in Taiwan as a taxi driver, but I'm at a disadvantage because I don't speak any Taiwanese, and a lot of people in Taiwan don't necessarily speak Mandarin, so if I want to be a taxi driver, I'm at a disadvantage because I don't speak Taiwanese. So yes, indeed, if you don't have the top-end smartphone, you're at a disadvantage. You may not have access access to the best apps and the best smartphones and stuff like that. And this problem has recently become more evident because of the coronavirus pandemic, which has caused many schools to move their classes online. So when something becomes evident, that means you can see it more clearly. This problem has existed all the time, but it's not really noticeable because everybody's in the classroom together. But now it's more evident. It's more noticeable because of the pandemic. Lots of schools have closed and classes are being taken online. My daughter's university classes were online there for a while last year, but then they went back to school normally. But yeah, for a while there, they were having classes online. And if you don't have the best devices, you're at a disadvantage.
There you go. This can be seen, obviously. This is evident. Yes, when classes go online, you might have to contact your other classmates via Zoom and stuff like that. And if your phone is old and slower, it might be difficult to run these programs at top speed. So maybe your end of the Zoom call there, it lags, it runs slowly, and it's harder for you to keep up. You might miss portions of the lecture and stuff like that, whereas those with the best smartphones and apps and stuff like that, their connection is clear and wonderful. So the quality of device, okay, it has become important. And yes, this digital divide, it has become obvious or evident to a lot of people. Anyways, that's one con. Let's move on to the next con. Smartphone addiction. It's a real thing. We'll talk about that right after a short break.
The biggest danger, though, is smartphone addiction. The devices offer so much, social media, messaging, games, videos, and so on, that people can become obsessed. Although using a smartphone might not seem like a big deal, numerous studies have found that too much screen time can lead to depression and loneliness. People become so reliant on phones that they aren't comfortable without the devices, and their behavior affects their relationships.
第二部分我们看到单字 reliant 这个字是形容词，指依赖的、依靠的，常见用法为 be reliant on or upon 加名词，例如 Your success as a rock band will be reliant on you finding an audience. 你的摇滚乐团要成功，必须靠你找到观众。另外，补充这个字的名词 reliance R-E-L-I-A-N-C-E reliance 指依赖、依靠，像是 When conducting research, my reliance on the internet is very strong. 我在做研究时会非常依赖网络。
Okay, let's talk about the biggest danger of smartphones. The biggest danger, though, is smartphone addiction. Addiction refers to something that is addictive, something that you can't do without. People can have an addiction to cigarettes, for example, or an addiction to alcohol or whatever. They just can't live without that stuff. To be addicted to something is the phrase, I'm addicted to work. I just love to work all the time. I have an addiction to work, and the devices offer so much social media, messaging, games, videos, and so on that people can become obsessed. So they offer so much that people can become obsessed. So when you're obsessed with something, you think about that thing only, and it's the only thing you think about, and you don't think about anything else.
Yeah, I've heard there's this game called League of Legends, and it's very popular with certain gamers, and sometimes people can get obsessed with this game. They think about it all the time to the point that it is unhealthy. That's all they're thinking about. They wake up in the morning and they're taking their shower. They're thinking about League of Legends. During breakfast, League of Legends. Brushing their teeth, they're thinking about League of Legends. I think you're getting the idea here. Now, although using a smartphone might not seem like a big deal, numerous studies have found that too much screen time can lead to, Ooh, depression and loneliness. So you can feel lonely if you use your phone too much, and you might start to feel depression. By the way, if you have depression, that means you start to experience low moods. You start to feel sad, unnaturally sad for long periods of time. Like, it's natural if your pet dies to feel sad for a while, but if you feel sad and you're not exactly sure why, or you're sad and your sadness lasts for longer than it should, then you might just be depressed or you might just be feeling depression.
Okay, and people become so reliant on phones that they aren't comfortable without the devices, and their behavior affects their relationships. If you are reliant on something, you depend on that thing. You need to have it, and if you don't have it, you're going to feel very, very uncomfortable. Of course, lots of children are reliant on their parents to provide them with food and shelter. You get the idea. Okay, let's move on now to the third and final part of our lesson. We'll listen to it first.
Surprisingly, one place that's wary of kids using smartphones is Silicon Valley, home to Apple, Google, Facebook, and other tech companies. Apple's Tim Cook refused to let his nephew join social networks. Bill Gates banned his kids from using cell phones until they were teenagers, and Steve Jobs wouldn't let his young children near iPads. Smartphones, however, aren't going anywhere. They have become an essential part of our lives, so we need to learn how to use them intelligently.
最后第三部分，我们看到形容词 wary 指谨慎的、小心翼翼的，之后常接 of 加名词或动词 ing。例如 Kathy is shy and wary of strangers. Kathy 生性害羞怕生。或是 Patty is wary of spending too much money on things she doesn't really need. Patty 很谨慎，不花太多钱在她不需要的东西上。另外，补充一个相关形容词 cautious, C-A-U-T-I-O-U-S, cautious 指小心的、谨慎的，像是 be cautious about something 就表示小心……我们可以说 You should be cautious about what you post online. 你应该要小心你张贴到网络上的东西。
Okay, so surprisingly, one place that's wary of kids using smartphones is Silicon Valley, home to Apple, Google, Facebook, and other tech companies. Yes, I believe Apple's actually the creator of the first smartphone, or the first really big world-changing smartphone. I believe there were smartphones that came before, but none was as popular or world-changing as the iPhone. And apparently, Silicon Valley there is wary of kids using smartphones. They're kind of scared of kids using smartphones.
Yeah, they're very careful about letting them do that. Like me, I'm wary of driving in Taipei traffic. I'm not really used to it, and I'm afraid I might cause an accident. I'm wary of driving in Taipei. And Silicon Valley, that's a place where some CEOs, I guess, don't really like their kids using their phones all the time. For example, Apple's Tim Cook refused to let his nephew join social networks. Bill Gates banned his kids from using cell phones until they were teenagers, and Steve Jobs, rest his soul, wouldn't let his young children near iPads. It's interesting. They invented all this stuff, but they didn't want their kids to use them until a certain age.
Yep. Smartphones, however, aren't going anywhere. They have become an essential part of our lives, so we need to learn how to use them intelligently. So we have the pros and cons, and here's the conclusion. Smartphones aren't going away. They're here to stay. They are now an essential part of our lives. For the most part, we can't live without them. Even I'm a big critic of them. I still use my iPad all the time. I'm using it right now, in fact, okay? I use it on a daily basis to check news. And if I want to look something up, Google is my first place I check. Yes, My iPad is essential to the way I live my life. I can't live without it.
Well, I can live without my smartphone, but I do feel kind of naked sometimes if I don't use my smartphone at least 2 or 3 times a day. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation. It's time now to listen to our Chinese teacher.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第一部分它有用到2个单字，一个是 distraction， 另外一个是 evident。 那我们来分别拆解这2个字的字首字根哦。首先我们看到名词 distraction， 它有分心的意思，那它是来自动词 distract。 我们先看到这个字根 tract， tract 它有拉、吸引、移动或者是拖的意思。那么在 distract 这个字当中，它的字首 dis 表示偏离， tract 表示拉力。那同学们可以试着想，把注意力都拉走，都拉偏了，把你的注意从原本专注的地方拉开，应该可以联想到 distract 它可以表达使什么分心、转移注意力的意思。顺便补充几个有相同字根的单字，像第一个 attract， A-T-T-R-A-C-T， attract 它的字首 A-T 是来自 A-D， 因为 A-D 碰到了 T 开头的字根，所以拼作 A-T。 好，这个字首呢是表达朝向，那么 tract 表示拉力。像我们看到很美或是很有趣的事物呢，它们就好像有拉力一样，会把你的注意力拉向它们。用这种方式应该可以联想到 attract 它有吸引或是引起什么注意的意思。第二个补充的是 extract， E-X-T-R-A-C-T， 它的字首 E-X 表示向外， tract 表示汲取，把里面的精华萃取出来，把它从里面向外拿出来，这样应该可以去联想到说 extract 它有提取、萃取或是取出的意思。第三个补充的是 subtract，它的字首 S-U-B 表示分开，那么 tract 表示抽。当我们把东西分离，把一部分把它拿走、抽走，这样应该可以联想到 subtract 它有扣除掉的意思。那么这个字呢，它就可以表达减去或是减掉。好，那我们接着来看到形容词 evident， 它是用来形容显而易见的或是明白的。那我们同样先从字根开始。好， V-I-D、V-I-S、V-I-E-W 这一类的字根表示观看、观察或是看到。那么在 evident 这个字当中，它的字首 E 表示完全， V-I-D 表示看，那么 E-N-T 是形容词字尾。当某事物可以完全看到，可以看得一清二楚，这样应该很容易联想到 evident 就是表达显然、显而易见的意思。那顺便补充一下有这一类字根的单字哦，像第一个 vision，同学们应该知道它的意思。那它的字根 V-I-S 表示看， I-O-N 是名词字尾，把它合在一起 Vision 就表示视力啊、视觉或是眼光，它其实也有想象、展望、愿景的意思。如果在 Vision 的前面加上字首 E-N， 就会得到动词 envision， 就可以表达设想、预想、想象、展望。这个字首 E-N 它有这种使或是提供的意思。好，第二个补充的是 preview。好，它的字首 P-R-E 表示预先， V-I-E-W 表示观看。那预先观看应该很容易理解吧，就是它有预习啊、预看、预览，它还有预告片预先展示的意思。第三个补充的是 supervise， 它的字首 super 表示上方，字根 V-I-S-E 表示观察，那从上方来查看观察，应该很容易联想到 supervise 它有监督指导的意思。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Evident. It is evident from Tony's behavior that he is not getting enough sleep. Addiction. Dr. Smith opened up a new clinic downtown to treat addiction. Obsessed. Theo thinks his brother is too obsessed with money. Depression. The actor told the reporters that he suffered from depression. Wary. Parents should teach their children to be wary of strangers. Essential. For most companies these days, computers are an essential tool.
Discussion Starter starts now!
And now it's time for our discussion starter. Roger, Do you think schools should embrace smartphone use? Why or why not?
Well, I don't think schools should embrace smartphone use because kids just keep getting distracted. Even though teachers mean well, kids are sneaky. They're always trying to use their smartphones when they're not supposed to. They should be totally banned. They should leave them at the front gate when they come to the school. How about you?
I don't know about that. Smartphones do provide a number of educational benefits, like getting kids used to coding environments, okay? The jobs of the future are going to probably involve a whole lot of coding. So, let's get these kids not only using apps, but learning how to make apps by way of coding and stuff like that. Let's get these kids ready for the jobs of the future. Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you guys enjoyed reading and learning along with us. I am Jeff.
I am Roger.
See you next time.